Rivalries naturally occur in every industry, whether it be Coke versus Pepsi, Ford versus General Motors, Amazon versus every other store in the world combined, or the infamous rivalry between the Beatles and the Wiggles. Who copied who? But the first thing you think of when you hear the word rivalry is sports. So here are 10 rivalries from around the world, and their stadiums of course. The Old Firm, fought between the two teams that absolutely dominate Scottish football, Celtic and Rangers. Together, they've won 106 out of 125 Scottish championships. No club since Aberdeen in 1984-85 has denied these two Glaswegian juggernauts the title. Celtic play at, Celtic Park, which is a great example of an old stadium that has seamlessly evolved over the years into a modern stadium, while still retaining some of its old school features. And on the inside, there's no ambiguity about who plays here. There's green everywhere, and it says Celtic on the seats. Rangers play at Ibrox Stadium, another stunning ground. This one looks slightly more old school than Celtic Park, and the brickwork looks a little better. Both are magnificent stadiums. Glasgow is really spoilt in that department. Being a football fan from Edinburgh must suck. I'm not trying to be mean, but none of your teams get a look in. You'd probably just choose rugby, I reckon. El Clasico. These clubs have copped some criticism in recent times. People are saying they're greedy, that they're trying to destroy football as we know it in order to line their pockets. And I thought so too, until I learned that Real Madrid's president, Florentino Perez, the man behind the Super League, is only just barely a billionaire. Only $1.4 billion. How does he get by? And people are calling him selfish? Poor thing, he's just trying to put food on the table. Where was I? Oh yes, once again, both of these teams absolutely dominate football in their country. Not quite as much as the Glaswegian teams, but still. Real Madrid's stadium is currently being upgraded at a cost greater than most stadiums are to build from scratch, which will see it effectively become a brand new stadium, one that does look very impressive. Barcelona were planning an upgrade as well, but COVID put an end to that for now. So once Real Madrid's renovation is complete, the two stadiums will be chalk and cheese. Barcelona's, while being bigger, will be inferior when it comes to amenities. Very little covered seating compared with 100% covered seating. A somewhat dull exterior compared with a futuristic rice cooker exterior? Is that what they were going for? Michigan Wolverines versus Ohio State Buckeyes. Some say it's North America's greatest rivalry. Incredibly, both stadiums have a capacity of over 100,000, so that is saying something. Unlike the last two, these two teams don't dominate, although they are both very successful teams. Michigan Stadium, nicknamed the Big House, is the largest in North America. It is a fairly simple, symmetrical, single-tiered bowl design, but it looks alright, especially on the outside. Ohio Stadium, on the other hand, is a little more unique. It's in the shape of a horseshoe, and although it has a smaller capacity, it certainly looks more imposing. Both are made up of predominantly bench seating. Boston Red Sox versus the New York Yankees. The Red Sox and the Yankees have been going at it for over 100 years. One of the more interesting aspects of this rivalry is the so-called Curse of the Bambino, that started when the legendary Babe Ruth, a Red Sox player, was sold to the Yankees. The Red Sox then went 86 years without winning a World Series, which is an incredible drought. But I mean, it is the World Series. There must be a lot of baseball teams in the world, so you can't win that often. The stadiums are completely different. Yankee Stadium is a multi-billion-dollar modern stadium inspired by the old stadium that went by the same name. Fenway Park, however, is the real deal. It's been around since 1912 and opened around the same time that the Titanic sank. It's especially known for its green monster, a huge wall in left field. Liverpool versus Manchester United. It's regarded as the biggest fixture in English football outside of Accrington Stanley matches. It's an interesting one because both teams have top-tier rivals in their own city, but those rivalries are overshadowed by this one. Probably because Manx don't like Scousers and Scousers don't like Manx. I think I have the terminology correct there. Both stadiums are very old but have been extensively upgraded over the years. 3/4 of Anfield looks like a fairly typical English football stadium, and then you have the magnificent main stand that looks both very modern and old school at the same time. It's currently the only stadium in the world with a Kop and a Klopp. Old Trafford is kind of the opposite, with one small side and 3 bigger sides of the ground. Kind of similar to Celtic Park. It's also the biggest club football stadium in England. Superclasico. I guess it's like El Clasico except it can fly. It's considered by many to be the biggest derby in the world, and that makes sense because these two teams' fan bases combined make up over 2/3 of the entire Argentine football fan base. Although they can fly, they don't quite have the same kind of cash as the Spanish Giants, so their stadiums aren't exactly state of the art. But I don't think that really matters. La Bombonera is one of the more unique designs going around, with very steep stands on 3 sides and a vertical stand on the other. El Monumental is less unique and less rectangular, but still impressive, in a way. Both teams have plans to upgrade, although they are far from being set in stone. Chicago Bears versus the Green Bay Packers. Well, I had to include at least one NFL rivalry, and what better than the oldest rivalry? Soldier Field is kind of the oldest stadium in the NFL, although it was almost completely rebuilt since then. With its mix of old and new, it actually looks fantastic. The exterior is rather extravagant, especially the neo-classical remnants of the old stadium. Lambeau Field is perhaps the most iconic NFL stadium. Out of all of them, it looks the most like a college stadium, which is a good thing because they tend to be timeless designs. One thing Soldier Field and Lambeau Field do share is the bitterly cold winter weather and lack of any protection from it. Derby County versus Nottingham Forest. It's definitely not as well known as some of the others on this list, but why not include a smaller one? It's certainly a fierce rivalry though. Unfortunately, there's only one major football club in Derby, so there's no Derby. And the only other significant football team in Nottingham is, well, it's not so significant these days. Notts County is currently a non-league club. Pride Park's design is based on Middlesbrough's Riverside Stadium, except I think it looks a little better. The city ground dates back to the 19th century, and not only is it in a nice spot right by the river, but I particularly like all the hits of red throughout the stadium. Both are great little stadiums though. Boston Celtics versus the Los Angeles Lakers. Yes, they play in arenas, not stadiums, but semantics aside, this is by far the biggest rivalry in the NBA. They are also the two most successful NBA teams. The Staples Center, recently referred to as the house that Kobe built, rest in peace Kobe Bryant, is shared with the Clippers of the NBA and the Kings of the NHL. Boston's TD Garden is also shared with an NHL team, the Bruins. The Staples Center definitely has a better looking exterior, and the TD Garden looks a little bit like a shoebox. On the inside, they are fairly similar. I mean, they're both basketball arenas after all, but I'd have to give it to Boston. That parquet court really sets it apart. Olympiakos versus Panathinaikos. This matchup is poetically referred to as the derby of eternal enemies, and it's very true. They're not going to be kissing and making up anytime soon. They are the two most successful clubs in Greece and are both located in the Athens urban area. Olympiakos definitely has a more modern stadium, something you might see anywhere in Europe. And it's a stone's throw from the ocean. Panathinaikos, on the other hand, doesn't have quite the same amenities, but it is an interesting looking stadium, very colourful. You could even be mistaken for thinking it was Ireland's national stadium. Sadly, it could potentially be demolished within the coming years, but onwards and upwards. And that's it for today's video. We might make a part 2, so please leave your suggestions in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, have a good one.